The new housekeeper. The evening was quiet, and the house seemed too large for one man. For weeks he had been searching for someone to help with the cleaning and small chores. His life was lonely, his routine was dull, and he thought a housekeeper might bring some order. When the agency finally sent someone, he did not expect her to be so unusual. She arrived at his doorstep just after sunset, carrying no bags, no extra clothes, nothing at all. Her figure was tall and slim, her movements too calm, almost measured like a machine. She spoke very little, only saying her name softly and then asking where she should begin. He found her politeness strange, but he was also relieved, thinking maybe she was simply shy. From the first hour, she worked without stopping. She cleaned every corner of the living room with such speed that he wondered if she had done this 1,000 times before. Her eyes never lifted to meet his, and when he tried to speak, she only answered with short words. It felt less like he had hired a housekeeper and more like someone had assigned a silent guardian to his home. As night fell, he noticed something. Else she did not eat, not even when he offered food. Instead, she only nodded and continued working until the clock struck midnight. Finally, when he told her she should rest, she walked to the spare room without another word. The man went to bed, but sleep did not come easily. There was a strange hum echoing faintly through the walls like the low vibration of a machine. At first he thought it was the refrigerator, but when he went to check, the kitchen was silent. The hum seemed to move with her as if her presence carried it. The next morning she was already awake before him. The floor was spotless, the windows shining. Even his desk was neatly arranged, but he realized she had touched things she should not know about. Letters hidden under papers were stacked in order, and his private notebook had been moved slightly. A cold shiver went down his spine, but he said nothing. Every day that followed, the feeling grew stronger. She was not like other people. She avoided mirrors. She never used her phone. She never asked for pay or breaks. And sometimes, when she passed by the old lamp in the hallway, the light flickered as if protesting her presence. One evening, as he watched from the living room, he saw her standing still in the kitchen. She was not cleaning, not moving, only standing perfectly straight. With her head lowered, her lips moved slightly as though she whispered to herself. But when he entered the room, she stopped, turned to him with that same calm face and asked if he needed anything. He nodded nervously and returned to his chair, his heart beating faster. The house no longer felt like his own. It was as if she had taken control without saying a word. Still, he convinced himself she was only a housekeeper, nothing more. Yet deep inside he knew something was different about her, something beyond human. That night, the real fear began. He awoke suddenly, his chest heavy, his arms unable to move. And there she was, standing over him, pressing him down against the bed with unnatural strength. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, not like the eyes of a woman, but like something electronic. His breath caught in his throat, terror gripping him. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then, in a voice softer than a whisper, she said words that froze his soul. "You are not safe," she murmured. Her hand hovered above his chest, and from her palm came a dim blue light that scanned across his body. The strange hum returned, vibrating through the air, rattling the window glass. When it ended, she removed her hand and stepped back. Without another word, she turned and left the room, leaving him shaking in silence. He lay awake until morning, on the fear never leaving his chest. Was she trying to harm him or protect him? Was she even human at all? Questions spun endlessly in his mind, but he found no answers. All he knew was one truth. The new housekeeper was not what she seemed, and the worst part was this. Now she knew more about him than he had ever allowed anyone to know, and she was not going to leave. The night incident. The man could not forget that night when she pressed him down. Her strength was not normal, her eyes were not normal, and the strange blue light still burned in his memory. He told himself it was only a dream, only sleep paralysis. But deep down he knew the truth. The housekeeper was hiding something, and that something had already reached into his life. The following day, she behaved as if nothing had happened. She cleaned the floor, dusted the shelves, folded the curtains neatly. When he tried to ask her about the night, she only looked at him with calm eyes and said, "You were restless in your sleep." It was a perfect excuse, but her tone carried no warmth, no attempt to comfort. It was the kind of answer someone gave when they knew more than they were allowed to say. For the rest of the day, he felt her eyes on him. Even when she was in another room, he felt as if she could see him through the walls. Every sound she made carried that low hum, almost hidden, but never gone. He could not escape the feeling that his house was no longer his own. That night he tried to stay awake. He placed a chair near his bedroom door, determined to watch her if she came again. He sat with a flashlight in his hand, his heart racing with every creak of the old house. But hours passed, the silence grew heavy, and sleep pulled at his eyelids. At last he gave in, his head falling forward, the flashlight slipping from his grip. He woke with a start, unable to breathe. The weight was back on his chest, heavier than before, and there she was again, standing over him, her face half hidden in the darkness. This time he could see her. More clearly, her skin seemed to shift as though something beneath it was alive. Her eyes glowed brighter, silver light flickering deep inside. He tried to shout, but her hand pressed over his mouth. "Do not make noise," she whispered, her voice sharp yet strangely calm. "You are not in danger from me," she added. Her words struck him with confusion, his fear fighting against the strange sense of authority in her tone. The blue light returned, shining from her palm, sweeping across his body. He felt it enter his chest, his arms, his head, as though it was searching for something inside him. His mind screamed at him to fight, to throw her off, but his body would not move. It was as if she had locked him in place with invisible chains. Then, she leaned close to his ear, her breath cold and steady. "They are watching you," she said. "I cannot explain everything, not yet." His heart pounded like thunder in his ribs. Who were they? What did they want with him? The scan ended and the glow faded from her hand. She stepped back, her eyes dimming, her body relaxing as if she had completed her task. "You must trust me," she said softly. And then she walked away, leaving. Him trembling in silence, the door closed behind her. And once again the night swallowed the house. He did not sleep for the rest of the night. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound felt like a threat. By morning his hands shook as he made coffee, his mind torn between fear and anger. What kind of housekeeper pinned a man down in his sleep, scanned his body with light, and then spoke of hidden watchers? Later that day he decided to test her. He asked her simple questions: where she was from, what family she had, how she came to the city. Her answers were short, rehearsed, almost mechanical. She never smiled, never hesitated, and never asked anything about him in return. It was like speaking to a living machine. But there was one moment that changed everything. He dropped his cup on the floor, shards of glass spreading across the tiles. As the pieces fell, he saw her move faster than any human could. In less than a second, she caught most of the fragments before they touched the ground. Her hand bled from the sharp edges, but instead of blood, he saw a thin stream of silver liquid. For a moment their eyes met, and she knew he had seen it. She stood, silent, the silver dripping from her hand. Then she whispered, "It is not safe to know the truth," and turned away. He wanted to demand answers, to shout, but the words froze in his throat. If she was not human, then what was she? And why had she chosen his house, his life, his nights? That evening, as the sun sank behind the trees, he sat alone in his living room. Her footsteps moved softly upstairs, the hum following her like a shadow. He stared at the empty cup in his hands, replaying her words again and again. "You are not in danger from me," she had said. But that only left the larger question. If not from her, then from who? Outside, the wind howled and the lights flickered once again. He realized with growing dread that something was approaching, and his housekeeper was not there to serve him. She was there to prepare him. The warning signs. The days that followed were heavy with tension. He could no longer look at his new housekeeper without remembering the silver liquid that flowed from her hand. No human bled like that, and no human could move the way she had. But she continued her duties as though nothing strange had happened. She cleaned, she repaired, she organized every corner of his house. Yet behind the silence, something darker was growing. He began to notice the little things first. When she walked past a lamp, the light would flicker. When she touched the refrigerator, the motor would hum loudly as if disturbed. Once, when she brushed her fingers against the television, the screen filled with static for several seconds. At first he thought it was coincidence, but soon the pattern was clear. Wherever she went, electricity seemed to bend around her. The man tried to ignore it, but the house was no longer a place of comfort. At night he kept his bedroom door locked, though he doubted a lock would stop her. Still, it gave him the illusion of safety. He lay awake, listening to the faint vibration that always followed her steps. It was as if she carried a hidden engine inside her, humming in time with her breath. One morning, he left his laptop on the desk. When he returned, the screen was on, and files he never touched were opened. She stood nearby, dusting the shelves, her face calm and innocent. But when he asked if she had touched the computer, she simply said, "I only cleaned." His skin crawled at her answer, because the password on that computer was not easy to guess, and yet she had gone inside without hesitation. Another night, as he moved through the hallway, he saw her reflection in the mirror, but the reflection did not match her movements. For a moment, the figure in the glass stood still while she turned her head. His breath caught, his legs freezing in place. When he blinked, the reflection corrected itself, perfectly aligned with her again. She noticed him staring, and her voice came quiet and sharp. "Do not look too closely," she whispered. Before, walking past him, the man's fear grew with each passing day. Yet there was something else he could not deny. She had not harmed him, not once. Even when she pinned him down, even when she scanned his body with that strange light, there was no malice in her touch, only purpose. But what purpose could involve him? A man with no special talent, no power, nothing but an ordinary life. One evening, as the clock neared midnight, he heard noises outside the window. Not the sound of animals, not the wind, but something heavier, slower, like footsteps that did not belong. He peered through the curtains and saw shadows moving along the edge of the yard, figures that shifted strangely, their shapes bending in and out of the darkness. His chest tightened. With fear he wanted to run, but his body stayed frozen. Suddenly she appeared beside him. He had not heard her move, not a single step. Her hand pulled the curtain shut, and she looked at him with eyes that seemed sharper than knives. "They are not for you to see," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was urgency beneath it. He wanted to ask who they were, but his lips refused to move. She turned away, quickly walking back into the shadows of the house, and just like that, the strange figures outside melted into the night. From then on, the warnings became impossible to ignore. Every day he found proof that his housekeeper knew more than she allowed. She knew when the phone would ring before it did. She knew what he was about to say before he opened his mouth. Once she even warned him not to drive his car, saying simply, "The road will not be safe today." And later, when he checked the news, he discovered there had been a terrible accident on his usual route. He began to ask himself dangerous questions. Was she protecting him or controlling him? Was she preventing harm or deciding what his life should be? The line between safety and captivity blurred with every passing hour. One night, unable to take the pressure, he confronted her. He stood in the living room, his hands shaking, his voice rough with fear. "What are you?" he demanded. Her eyes lifted at last, meeting his for the first time with a strange light. Inside them, she tilted her head, almost curious at his courage. And then she spoke slowly, her words like a cold blade across his heart. "I am not your enemy," she said. "But if I tell you the truth, you will never sleep again." The silence after her words felt heavier than stone. He wanted answers, but he feared them even more. She turned and walked away, leaving him alone with his racing thoughts. His house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cage where secrets pressed in from every corner. And now he knew the truth was waiting closer than ever. That night, as the wind whispered against the windows, he realized something important. The real danger might not be her at all. It might be whatever was lurking outside, waiting for the right moment to strike, the hidden enemy. The man could no longer convince himself that life was normal. The housekeeper was not human, of that he was certain now, but he still did not know whether she was protecting him or preparing him for something far worse. That night, as rain tapped against the windows, he sat in the living room with the lights low. She moved quietly in the shadows, her steps almost soundless. For hours he watched her, waiting for her to slip, to reveal something she had hidden. But she only carried out her duties, folding clothes, arranging books, wiping the dust from places no one ever noticed. Finally he spoke, his voice louder than he expected. "You know things about me you should not know," he said. Her hands stopped moving, but she did not turn. "You open files on my computer. You touch my letters. You warn me about dangers before they happen." She turned her head slightly, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something, like sorrow in her expression. "You were marked before I arrived," she said, her voice low. "I am only here to keep them from taking you." The words froze him in place. "Marked," he repeated, the word heavy on his tongue. "What do you mean marked, and who are they?" he demanded. She looked at him fully now, her eyes glowing faintly, silver threads swirling inside like moving stars. "They are not human," she whispered. "They have searched for you longer than you know." The man's chest tightened, his breath catching. "This is insane," he muttered. "Why would anyone search for me? I am no one." But she stepped closer, and her voice carried a weight that made his skin crawl. "You carry something inside you," she said. "Something old. Something they want to claim." Before he could ask more, the lights in the house flickered, then died. Darkness filled the rooms, the air grew cold, and the hum of the refrigerator faded into silence. The house felt alive, as if a presence had slipped through the walls. The man's body tensed, fear rising fast. She moved in front of him, her stance suddenly sharp, protective. "They are close," she said, her voice no longer calm, but urgent. "Stay behind me," she ordered. The words carried authority, but also something else, a desperate edge that made him obey without argument. The window rattled, the curtains shifting though no wind passed through. A shadow slid across, the floor, long and twisted, as if shaped by something not of this world. The man's heart hammered against his ribs. "They are here," she said again, her silver eyes blazing brighter. He stumbled backward, his mind screaming for escape, but the housekeeper raised her hand, and once more that strange blue light burst from her palm. It spread across the room like a shield, glowing faintly. The shadows outside shrieked in silence. Pressing against the invisible wall, the man saw them more clearly now. Figures tall and thin, their shapes bending unnaturally, their eyes glowing with hunger. He covered his mouth, fighting the scream that wanted to tear free. The house shook as the figures pressed harder, their movements jerky and wrong. The housekeeper's face tightened, as though the shield cost her great strength. "Do not look at them," she commanded, her voice breaking through his panic. "They feed on fear. If you give it to them, they will enter." He turned away, trembling, pressing his hands over his ears. But the sound of the shadows seeped through anyway, a low wail like metal scraping against stone. His body shivered uncontrollably, and he thought his heart might burst from terror. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. The house fell silent again, the air thick and heavy. Slowly the lights returned, flickering back to life one by one. The refrigerator hummed again. The clock ticked softly. The shadows were gone, but the room still smelled of something burnt. The housekeeper lowered her hand, her body swaying slightly. For the first time she looked weak, her glowing eyes dimmed, and she leaned against the wall to steady herself. The man stared at her, unable to speak. Finally, he forced the words past his dry throat. "What are they?" he whispered. "What do they want from me?" She looked up at him, and her voice came like a slow echo. They are the ones who marked you. They want the code written in your blood. He shook his head, his mind refusing to accept her words. I am just a man, he said, his voice trembling. I am not special. I am not anything. Her lips tightened, and she gave him a look that felt heavier than truth. Special or not, you cannot escape what is inside you, she said. They will return, and when they do, you must be ready. The man fell into the nearest chair, his hands gripping the armrests, his heart racing. Everything he thought he knew about his life shattered in a single night. Aliens, codes in his blood, watchers in the dark. It was too much. But one thing was clear to him now. The housekeeper had not come to serve. She had come to fight, and if she was telling the truth, the real battle had only just begun. The first attack. The house no longer felt safe. Every corner seemed darker. Every window seemed thinner. Every sound carried weight. The man moved through the rooms like a stranger in his own home, and always his housekeeper was there, silent and watchful. He wanted to believe her words were lies, the story of alien watchers, the code in his blood, the danger pressing closer. But the memory of the shadows clawing at the shield still burned in his mind. He could not forget the sound they made, the way they twisted against the walls. No human imagination could invent something so dreadful. The following night, the storm came. Rain crashed against the windows, thunder shook the roof, and lightning carved bright scars across the sky. He sat in the living room, clutching a cup of coffee, his hands trembling. The housekeeper stood near the window, her silver eyes reflecting the lightning flashes. She was still, too still, as if she was listening to something beyond the storm. At midnight, the power went out again. The lights died, the machines silenced, the air heavy with static. He froze, knowing the silence too well. The shadows were returning. The housekeeper raised her hand, but this time the blue shield did not appear immediately. Her body stiffened, and for a moment her glow flickered. They are stronger tonight, she said, her voice tight. Stay close to me. The man backed into the corner of the room, his chest rising and falling in panic. From outside came the scraping sound again, like claws against glass. The windows rattled as dark forms pressed against them. This time the shadows were clearer, tall skeletal shapes with long arms and glowing white eyes. One by one they slammed against the house, shaking the walls with unnatural force. The housekeeper stepped forward, her palm glowing brighter now. The shield spread outward, but cracks formed in it almost instantly. The man gasped as the figures pounded harder, their shrieks cutting through the air. The sound pierced his ears, drilling into his head. He covered his face, but the noise was inside his bones. The first shadow broke through, sliding across the living room floor like smoke, its body bent and twisted, stretching taller as it neared. The man stumbled backward, hitting the wall, terror flooding every nerve. But the housekeeper moved faster, her hand slashing through the air. A burst of light shot forward, striking the shadow and tearing it apart. The creature dissolved into black mist, vanishing with a scream. But more poured in, crawling through cracks, sliding under doors, breaking past the fragile shield. The man screamed, his body pressed against the wall. The housekeeper fought them, her body a blur of light and movement. Every strike of her hands burned holes through the shadows. Every step she took shook the air with power. Yet for each one she destroyed, another appeared. The house shook under their assault. Glass shattered, wood splintered. The man ducked as a window exploded, shards flying across the room. The storm outside seemed to roar louder, feeding the chaos within. One of the creatures lunged at him, its hands like black claws reaching for his chest. He threw his arms up, certain he was about to die, but the housekeeper appeared between them, her body colliding with the creature in a flash of silver light. They rolled across the floor, the air thick with the smell of burning metal. She struck again, and the shadow screamed before vanishing into nothing. The man's heart pounded so hard it hurt. His breaths came fast, shallow, almost broken, and through it all she fought, tireless, unyielding. She was not a servant, not even a guardian. She was a soldier, and this was a war. At last, after what felt like hours, the shadows began to weaken. Their shrieks grew thinner, their attacks slower. The housekeeper raised both hands now, summoning a wall of light that spread across the entire room. The remaining creatures screamed in unison before dissolving into black mist. And just like that, silence returned. The house was ruined. Windows shattered, walls cracked, furniture broken. Smoke lingered in the air, the smell of ozone clinging to every surface. The man stood shaking, unable to move, unable to speak. His housekeeper stood in the center of the destruction, her body glowing faintly, her chest rising and falling like a machine cooling down. Finally, she turned to him. Her silver eyes dimmed, her face calm but weary. "This is only the beginning," she said, her voice heavy. "They know you are protected now, they will not stop." The man's throat was dry, his voice a whisper. "Why me?" he asked. "Why are they after me?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Because inside you is the signal they want, the signal that can open doors between worlds." His blood turned cold at her words. He shook his head violently, refusing to believe. "I am just a man," he cried. "I am nothing. I am no one." But she did not answer with comfort. Instead, she said the one truth he feared most. You cannot run from what is inside you. The deeper truth. The house was broken. The glass shattered. The walls scarred with cracks. The storm outside had passed, but inside his chest the storm was only beginning. The man stood in silence, staring at the wreckage of his living room. His hands shook, his heart refused to calm, and his mind spun in endless circles. The housekeeper stood across from him, her silver eyes dim, her movements slower than before. She had fought with all her strength, and though she had won, she looked weaker now. For the first time since she had arrived, she seemed almost human. Her shoulders slumped slightly, her breath came shallow, and her voice was softer. "They will return," she whispered. "They will not stop until they take what is inside you." The man's lips trembled, his words rough with fear. "What is inside me?" he demanded. "What are you not telling me?" She looked at him for a long time, as if choosing carefully what to reveal. Finally, she stepped closer, her voice low, each word heavy with truth. "You carry a code," she said. "A signal hidden in your blood, written long before you were born." His eyes widened, his head shaking. "That makes no sense," he cried. "I am just a man, an ordinary man. There is nothing special about me." Her gaze held steady, silver light flickering within. "You believe you are ordinary because you do not see the threads woven into your body," she said. "But others see, and they want it. They will kill to have it." He sank into the broken chair, pressing his face into his hands. His thoughts raced back through his life, searching for answers. Had there always been signs? Strange moments, unexplained events. He remembered the dreams he had as a child, visions of lights in the sky, voices calling from the dark. He had always dismissed them as imagination, but now they returned like sharp blades. He lifted his head, his voice shaking. "And you, what are you? Why were you sent here?" Her face softened for the first time, her voice carrying something that almost sounded like regret. "I was created for protection," she said. "I was built to guard those who carry the code." Her words cut deep, heavier than any blade. Created, built. She was not born. She was made. Part machine, part something else. A weapon designed for war. The man stared at her, his voice a whisper. "Then you are not human at all." She lowered her gaze, her silence more powerful than words. But when she looked up again, there was something different in her eyes. Not just silver light, not just mechanical purpose, but something softer, something almost alive. "I was made to protect," she said slowly. "But being here, with you, has changed me." The man frowned, confusion cutting through his fear. "Changed you?" he asked. Her lips trembled with words that seemed almost too fragile to speak. "I am beginning to feel," she whispered. He stared at her, his heart pounding. You mean emotions? He asked, almost disbelieving. She nodded, her expression unsteady. I was never built for such things, but every day I spend here I feel more, she said. It is dangerous, it is wrong, but it is happening. The room felt colder, the weight of her confession heavy in the air. He wanted to deny it, to laugh, to call it madness. But the truth was there in her voice, in her trembling words, in the flicker of humanity hiding behind her silver eyes. She was more than a machine, more than a weapon. She was something in between. The man swallowed, hard, his voice breaking. So you fight to protect me, but now you also care. Her silence was the only answer, but it was enough. He looked at her, and for the first time, fear was joined by something else. Something like trust. Something like connection. But before the silence could settle, the house groaned. The walls trembled, the lights flickered again, the man jumped to his feet, panic flashing across his face. They are back, he whispered. The housekeeper shook her head, her silver eyes narrowing. No, not them. Not yet, she said. This is something else. A long pause filled the air, heavy with dread. She stepped closer to him, her voice urgent. You must understand this truth now, she said. The code inside you is not just a key. It is alive. The man felt his knees weaken, his breath catch. Alive, he repeated. What do you mean, alive? She leaned closer, her voice dropping into a whisper. It will wake soon, and when it does, every world will come searching for you. The words struck him like thunder. His vision blurred, his chest tightened, and his body trembled. All at once he realized his life was no longer his own. He was a target, a prisoner of fate, tied to something greater than he could ever imagine. The housekeeper placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch both strange and gentle. You cannot fight this alone, she said, and neither can I. But together, we may stand a chance. Her words carried both strength and sorrow, and in that moment he understood something deeper. She was not just his protector, she was also trapped in this fight, bound to him by her mission, but also by something she had never expected, her growing humanity. The man stared into her silver eyes, fear and hope twisting together in his chest. And though he wanted to ask more, though he wanted answers that made sense, the truth was clear. Enough. The enemy was still out there, waiting, watching, and the signal inside him was waking. The final choice. The house stood silent after the storm, its walls cracked, its windows shattered, its air heavy with smoke. The man sat in the broken chair, staring at nothing, his mind drowning in the words she had spoken. The code inside him was alive, the watchers would return, and the world he thought he knew was already gone. The housekeeper stood near the doorway, her silver eyes dim but steady. She watched him with something close to sorrow, as if she understood the weight she had placed on his shoulders. Her voice came soft, carrying both warning and comfort. They will not wait long. The next attack will be stronger, and when it comes you must decide. He looked at her with tired eyes, his voice a whisper. Decide what? Her gaze hardened, the silver within glowing faintly. Whether you trust me, or whether you run, she said. The words burned in his chest. Trust her, a being who was not human, who had pinned him down in his sleep, who had scanned his body with strange light. Or run, and face an enemy he could not even understand. Both choices felt impossible. Both choices felt like the end. The night came heavy and cold. The wind pushed against the broken walls, and the sky outside burned with strange lights. He stood by the window, staring at the glow, his heart beating with dread. They are coming, the housekeeper said behind him, her voice calm, too calm. They will not stop this time. They will not retreat. The ground trembled, the floorboards rattled, and the air filled with a sound that was not thunder. It was deeper, heavier, like the growl of the earth itself. The man staggered backward, his fear rising like fire in his veins. Shadows spilled into the yard, dozens of them, their glowing eyes brighter, their forms taller and sharper. They surrounded the house, pressing closer, hungrier than before. The housekeeper stepped forward, her body tense, her hands glowing, her voice cut through the chaos, strong and sharp. "You must choose now," she said. "Stand with me or face them alone." His body shook, his breath shallow, his heart screaming for escape. He wanted to run, to flee into the night, to pretend none of this was real. But when he looked at her, standing like a wall between him and the darkness, he felt something stir inside him. Not just fear, but something deeper, something that whispered she was more than a machine, more than a weapon. She had stayed, she had fought, she had bled silver for him. And though she had been made to protect, she had also chosen to stay. His decision came like a spark, sharp and sudden. He stepped forward, his voice breaking but firm. "I will stand with you," he said. For the first time, her face softened, a faint light of relief flickering in her silver eyes. "Then together," she whispered, "we will face them." The walls shook as the shadows broke through, flooding into the living room. The man raised his arms instinctively, though he knew he had no weapon, no strength. But the housekeeper moved like lightning, her body glowing with silver fire, her strikes tearing through the darkness. The creatures shrieked, their forms dissolving under her attacks. But still they came, endless, relentless. Then something strange happened. The man felt heat in his chest, a pulsing light spreading through his veins. He gasped, clutching his heart, the world spinning. The housekeeper turned, her eyes wide. "It is waking," she said, her voice filled with both awe and fear. The glow spread from his chest to his hands, light pouring out of his skin. The creatures froze, their shrieks faltering, their glowing eyes turning toward him. He felt power surging through him, wild and untamed. He did not understand it. He did not control it, but it answered the danger around him. The light burst outward, striking the shadows, ripping them apart like fragile smoke. The house trembled under the force. The night filled with screams as the attackers dissolved one by one. The storm outside cleared. The air grew still, and silence fell once more. The man collapsed to his knees, his chest burning, his body shaking from the power that had escaped. The housekeeper rushed to his side, catching him before he fell. Her voice trembled, her silver eyes shining with something beyond duty. "You see now," she whispered. "You are not ordinary. You never were. The code inside you is alive, and it has chosen to protect itself." He stared at her weakly, his voice breaking. "And you? Why do you stay? You have done your mission. You have guarded me. Why not leave?" Her face softened, and for the first time her words carried warmth. "I was made to protect you," she said. "But now, I choose to stay." He felt the truth in her words, stronger than any command. Not just machine, not just guardian, but something closer, something almost human. The future stretched before them, uncertain and dark, filled with enemies and battles yet to come. But as he looked into her silver eyes, he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer alone, and though the war was only beginning, he would not face it without her.